Welcome to my YouTube channel on mindful reality. Today I want to talk about regret and retrospect. These are concepts that have very much to do with other topics I've recently been discussing on this series about doing and action and ideas around thinking and doing and action and decisions and choices. And so I would like to talk about retrospect and regret. These are concepts that are integral to our general way of thinking. When something happens after we've done something and the outcome didn't go our way, we naturally have a feeling of regret. Oh, shoot, I shouldn't have done that. If I hadn't done that, then such and such wouldn't have happened. I didn't make the right choice. And we achieve that state of mind via retrospect. I think retrospect is cruel and mean and a liar, because whether you believe you had a choice or not when you did make an action happen, when you acted, let's say you made a phone call and then the conversation didn't go well. You hang up and you think, man, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have called. But at the time that you called, there was a reason it felt necessary. It came out of your fingers to dial a number. It came out of your mouth, whatever you said. And in real time, at that time, it was essential. Even if 3 seconds after you dial and the person picks up the phone, you're like, oh gosh, I shouldn't have called. It's too late, because at the moment that you did call, something felt necessary. Now, I'm not a person who believes in choice or free will, so I would say you saw your fingers. I saw my fingers dialing, and there was no choice, because I'm only seeing my fingers dial after the fact that they're dialing and all that stuff. But most people believe in choice, so for this conversation, I think I can go there, because we all are present in the context of any moment. So, I'm not talking about a situation where you've been drugged and, you're doing something, or you're sleepwalking. You're doing something beyond your awareness. I'm talking about this tricky space between action, when you do something that you kind of know could go either way. It might be great that you called this person, and it might not be great that you called this person. Especially if it never even dawned on you that it wouldn't go well. That's really when retrospect is just cruel, because then it's a total surprise. If it's a situation where you're not sure if it's going to go well, then you know that was a chance. Now, the thing I always say to friends of mine, or people that I have these kind of discussions with, is that if you did something and it had turned out well, you would have been really glad you did it, and you would have thought, wow, I made a great decision. That was a great move. So retrospect makes it seem like you could have known before the fact how it was going to go. I always say this, if you go to a job interview and you say what you say, and you get this kind of weird look on the person's face, the interviewer, or, after the fact, you didn't get the job. You think, God, I shouldn't have said all that, But the thing is, if the person called you back and was like, we're giving you the job, we're taking everybody else even off the list because we loved what you said. This is the funny thing about real life and real time and action. So retrospect is always about, how do I want to say this? Retrospect is always giving an impression that you knew when you were doing something what the outcome was going to be. And I mean, that is the job of the mind. That is the thinking mind that creates these stories and narratives about, the power of the mind, that somehow it could have known something in advance, or you could have had certain information before the fact that you didn't have. And that's never true. I mean, it's 100% never true, because nobody knows what is going to happen, 10 seconds from this second. Nobody knows what their own body is going to do 10 seconds from this second, or even 5 seconds, what you're going to do. Are you going to pick up a phone? Are you going to walk into another room? Are you going to, drive somewhere? I mean, it's true. We have ideas all day long of plans and things we think we're going to do, but we don't actually know what we're going to do. Because if you think about all the millions of people on the planet who have these sudden accidents or strange things that happen, or any of us in a given day, just something you didn't expect, that, of course, anything could happen in any moment that would change the trajectory of what we were going to be doing. So because we don't know what could suddenly take a turn and go a different way, this idea of thinking back on something and assuming that all along we knew everything that was going to come after that event, and our own behavior even. So I got off on a bit of a tangent, because I will admit I got interrupted and I didn't want to throw this recording away. So you do something, let's just say you do something and you have mixed feelings about it, even when you're doing it. And yet you still do it. And you know that there was a chance that it wasn't going to go well, let's just say with another person that you have some kind of interaction with. And let's just say it goes really, really badly, and let's say the other person even blames you for your behavior. Because, of course, this has happened to all of us. It's certainly happened to me. And the mind just doesn't want to let go of the regret, or maybe a sense of regret. Not totally sure it's regret, but there's definitely a feeling inside the retrospect that when you were there making the decision of what you were going to say or do with this other person, that it could have gone otherwise. Now, a different episode would be dedicated to the concept of could have done otherwise, or something could have gone otherwise, and I don't see things that way. But that is not what this one is about. This is about that even if you believed that you in theory could have made a different decision, there's a reason you made the decision you made that day to have a certain conversation with a person, or to reach out the way you did. And again, I will just harp again, because retrospect is sneaky and is always going to jump in there, or same with regret, to make us feel like we did the wrong thing for ourselves. But at the time that we do anything, there's an awareness as an action is coming out of our body that we're okay with it, or we're hopeful about it, or we just know even in the moment we have no way to prevent it, because we're driven to do the thing we're going to do. There's a knowing. There's some kind of inner sense of awareness. I mean, not all the time. There are many times, driving is the perfect example. We're just going along kind of automatically, and then all of a sudden, this has happened to me many times. All of a sudden, I realized there was a pedestrian that was about to cross the street, and I didn't see them, and I almost hit them. But I'm not talking about those kind of situations. Even in that situation, still, the state of your brain was where it was, and there's no way to turn back time and make that have been different if you were spacing out or if I was not paying attention or if there was a blind spot or whatever. There's still nothing I could have done in those situations either. But I'm actually talking about situations where you're aware of what you're doing. Again, you think, oh, I'm going to make that phone call. I'm going to call that person. And it doesn't go well. But again, the milliseconds before you picked up the phone to make the phone call, again, the state of your mind was in a place of, I'm going to do this, even if you knew that the outcome could have been bad. So again, I'm just ragging right now on retrospect in general and how it tricks us into thinking that we had more information at a time when we did something, and that in general, for the future, that we will have more information for the next time we go to do something. And that will never be true, because there will never be a way to have more information in a given moment than what we have. And that's something to really chew on. And, we don't need to beat ourselves up for the fact that we don't have more information, and also to remember that no one does. But, we are a judgmental kind of culture, humans as a whole, and, some world cultures obviously worse than others, but we are up against all the time people's opinions of how we could have and should have acted, and we're judging everybody else that way too, if we happen to be that kind of a person, which most of us are by nature. And so there's never going to be a shortage of someone letting you know, well, you could have made a different decision. I mean, that was really a bad move. What were you thinking? But at the time, all of us are in the same boat. All of us. Nobody has leverage on this. We are all in the same boat of only being able to have the information we have in any given moment. So you pick up the phone to call someone, either you already know it's going to be a disaster, or, and even in those cases, you make a phone call, you think it's going to be a disaster, and actually it went well, and that surprised you. I mean, we've all had situations like that too, where we're pleasantly surprised. Same with whether it's the job interview or an audition for something, you think, oh, if only I hadn't done that thing. And then you find out that was actually the thing that they liked, because you can't know, all the time anyway, what someone else is going to like or what's going to hit them in a certain way in a given moment. And so I bring this up because this is a very common theme for all of us all the time. And also that even our thought processes before we even do things, or, considering whether we're going to do things or not, are wrapped around this idea that we have a way to know things that we don't know. Right? So even if you're planning, I think I'm going to call so-and-so. And, even in the moment that you're going to do it, even if you end up doing it, you're still only going to have the information you have. And then, it could be a week later, it could be 10 minutes later, it could be a year later. The person turns against you because of something you said. And you're shocked. Like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Or, wait, what? Wait, what? You're angry at what I just said? I was trying to be nice. Why are you responding that way? And these are things we can't predict. So again, with this kind of work, it's an awareness. And I ask you to get real quiet and still when you're thinking back on something that you regret. Go back to a minute before the event occurred that you're later regretting. Know that a minute before, 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before. Go back to, what your state of mind was at the time, which of course you're not going to be able to redraw perfectly, but you might have a sense and a memory of where you were at. What did you know at that time? And you'll remember that you didn't know. You didn't know. You went into calling or saying a specific something, maybe as the words are coming out of your mouth, sometimes you're like, oh, yikes, that's not going to go over well. Then again, the person might forgive you or they might not. But if it isn't something that I've had situations, one in particular, where I thought I was actually doing right by somebody and they hung up the phone. And it took like a week for me to even realize what had happened. Like, I thought we got disconnected. And it's like, and they were mortified and the relationship did not continue after that. Now, that's a situation where I actually knew very consciously that I thought I was doing this person a favor with my offer, and they didn't take it that way. So, it's not to say that we don't need to think carefully about, what we've done and if we've hurt someone's feelings, or, to know for the next time, like what kind of things this person likes or doesn't like, if there's going to be a next time. But the idea that at the time you did something, you could have known more, no way. There's no way you can't know something in advance. Someone might say, well, you should have known better. You should have known better, but you didn't. So if you didn't know better at that time, then that's an impossibility. And I don't like when my mind tricks me. And I am obviously, this work I do, which I call mindful reality, which is a self-inquiry practice, which is about taking a thought or a belief or a feeling and putting it up against a truth. And the truth here is that at the time that we do things, we only know what came before it. And we only know what's on our mind. And we only know the information we have even about a person that we're interacting with, or if it's not a person, then a situation. But there is absolutely no way that at any given moment we know more than we know. And we certainly don't know the circumstances and conditions of how things are going to unfold, especially if there's another person involved. There's a lot of circumstances around us all the time that are influencing us. And I'm going to leave it at that. So the next time you feel regret, recognize that regret is dependent on the what would be the word? The activity of retrospect, or the concept of retrospect. And retrospect is going back in time and trying to change something after the fact. And you can't change knowledge after the fact. Meaning that at the time you did something, the state of your mind at that time was what it was and not something else. So I'm going to leave you there. I hope you got something out of this episode, and I look forward to next time. Thank you for checking in.